What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Berk, aka Dansgreat here, and welcome to what I'm planning is going to be the final episode of Elden Ring, barring any DLC. Now, this is going to be a short one, but hopefully a sweet one. This is part 2 of my little revenge series against the 2 bosses that overwhelmed me during the LP, and I was forced to summon the Mimic tier in order to defeat them. So hopefully you guys have already seen Moog, but now it is time for the infamous Malenia. Now, Malenia was the main draw for actually doing this particular little kind of mini challenge, I guess. And over time, I just couldn't accept the fact that I could not defeat Malenia without summoning. And I knew I had it in me, but by the end of the playthrough, it had been such an epic marathon of a series that I did get burned out. And so I think after maybe about 4 hours or so of Malenia attempts, I was just like, you know what, I've had enough. The first form takes me too long anyway. And then once I get to the second form, it's just absolutely bonkers. There's the waterfowl dance that I can't dodge consistently, and even when I'm using my shield, she's still regaining HP just by making contact with the shield. That side of it felt very unfair, and I just did not feel like I had what it took to be able to defeat Malenia after 4 hours of attempts and collectively about 140 hours of gameplay. So I called it a day. Summoned, life got much easier after the summon, and I think within a few times of summoning she was already dead. But once again, same as Moog, with Malenia I was just very happy to defeat what was clearly an incredibly difficult boss and get very, very close to completing the run. But it never quite sat right with me, and it just wasn't quite the satisfaction that I'd hoped for. And it gave me memories of fighting Orphan in Bloodborne. Orphan for me was like my sort of Mount Everest. It was such a difficult boss and it took me a long time to defeat. But once I did defeat Orphan, the euphoria that I felt was just incredible, and it really summed up one of the reasons why Bloodborne was such an exhilarating experience for me. And I think for me at least, you know, that I just did not feel that with Malenia the way that I should, because I did it with summons. Now again, of course it goes without saying, but this is a completely personal thing. It's not... If you felt that euphoria using like every single trick in the book, including summons, then that's great for you and I'm very happy for you. And for me it's just as valid as doing it like level 1 as a wretch and slapping her to death and the euphoria you feel from that. At the end of the day, it's all about how you feel when you defeat a boss. No one else is going to take that away from you. And so whatever you've enjoyed, I think that's what's most important. But for me personally, it just wasn't enough. And after a few months of being away from the game, again, like I mentioned in the Moog video, starting to see more and more people just defeat Malenia, the ease with which people could defeat Malenia, it just started to get to me in the end, and I was like, you know what, I've got to come back to give this another go. I just had to know for like my own ego, am I capable of defeating Malenia without using any summons? So I set myself the task of starting a new game plus, carrying over the same levels that I had from my first run, speed running it to Malenia, so I didn't run through the whole game again. It only took me maybe like a couple of hours or something to do all of the steps necessary to be able to fight Malenia. Didn't do any leveling up, I just came back in with the same stats I completed the game with, and my goal was to defeat New Game Plus Malenia without using the Mimic tier or any summons this time around. And man, it was tough. I don't know how long it took. I would say probably in the vicinity of like 5 to 6 hours at least, maybe 7 to 8. I don't have all of it recorded, so I don't know the full length, but it was at the very minimum 6 hours straight of just attempts across like 2 or 3 different days. It was extremely tough, and it's not like as a result I ended up becoming an absolute pro against Malenia. If it took me like 7-8 hours to defeat her the first time, I think if I just started fighting again, it would probably still take me an hour or two to replicate the feat. Extremely tough, but I managed to do it in the end. Now, one of the other things that I set for myself was to basically try to do it with a similar kind of build to what I did last time. Because of course, once I completed the game, I started to learn a bit more about it, because it was no longer like a blind LP run situation. And so you start to learn about what tricks other people are using, what kind of builds are they rocking. And I saw, of course, a lot of builds across the internet where they made Malenia much easier work. And so I looked back and I was like, you know what, let me try to do it with the same weapon that I did last time. Because I did see a lot of people defeat Malenia over the subsequent months after completing the game myself. But to be fair, I didn't come across anyone that did it with the Blasphemy Blade, which was always my weapon of choice against most of the difficult bosses in the game. Now, that's not to say that no one did it with that or anything. I'm sure there's hundreds of videos on YouTube. But I would say if I saw like 10 or 15 different people defeat Malenia, no one used the Blasphemy Blade. And so it felt like this was my way of kind of defeating her. And so one of the things that I sort of set for myself was to make sure I still used the Blasphemy Blade, and I kept the same levels that I had from the ending of the game. So what I did do was I did respec, but nothing kind of too supremely drastic. Basically I wanted to keep my faith as low as possible, just about enough to be able to equip the Blasphemy Blade and to just focus more on vigor, strength and dexterity to be able to do as much damage as I could and to be able to survive in the battle for as long as I could. So that was my general sort of idea and how I went about it. But just like the Moog video, one of the things that I did realize after watching a lot of much better people play the game is that people who were truly good at this game, they just were not relying on shields. And once I saw that, I was like, you know what, I think it's just a better idea for me to get rid of this shield. She heals even when she strikes your shield anyway, so what the hell is the point? And so I was just like, get rid of the shield, start double-handing this weapon and doing more damage with it, and that's going to make the battle shorter and make life a little bit easier for you. It also lightens your equipment load, so your endurance doesn't potentially need to be quite as high, and so it opens up the door for better armors as well, potentially, without going into heavy load as well. So dropping the shield, I think, was definitely a good idea, and it was a step up for me in terms of like my setup for fighting against Malenia. And so once I did that, it was basically dropping the shield, double-handing the Blasphemy Blade, and getting to work on trying to defeat her with just lots of repeat attempts and getting better at the game. Now, of course, one of the primary ways in which you do need to get better is to be able to learn how to dodge the waterfowl dance. Now, I can't say that I end up becoming like, you know, oh, I took no damage from it 90% of the time once I got good. That never really happened. But what did happen was that, at least for the first one, I could kind of tell when it was coming and I could kind of plan for it. And what you'll see me do is basically try to bait it out after a time. So what I could see was that obviously it has some kind of proximity trigger when she drops below a certain amount of HP the first time. Once her health bar drops down to about 80-75%, then I know that first waterfowl is coming very soon. And so I start doing this sort of looping running move to try and get her to start doing it, because the further away you are when it starts, the greater your chances are of dodging the entire thing or taking very minimal damage. So that was like the first thing I started to do against Waterfowl Dance. Then obviously, once she uses the first one, then it was sort of just experience and eyeballing it and trying to get a feel for when she might use it again. So if she used it once at 75%, 80% range, then once I get down to about halfway, then I'm like, yeah, another one is probably coming soon. And so I create distance again, and I try to basically bait her into using the move. And the key for me was to try my best to not get caught out in a situation where basically I land an attack, or she lands an attack and then immediately goes into Waterfowl Dance, and I don't have the time to sprint away from her before it gets used, because I just do not have the skills to be able to dodge Waterfowl Dance with any kind of reliability when she raises up into the air basically within, like, I don't know, a meter or two of me. I do need that space to be able to dodge it. And so once I started to get used to doing that, I was definitely doing a lot more, I was definitely having a lot more successful attempts, and basically just using the first form as a way to basically prep for the second and make sure I didn't waste too much in the way of resources. So the first form eventually started to become more consistent, and of course being able to dodge Waterfowl Dance is even more important, because in the second form it gets even stronger. So the practice that you have in the first form does serve you a bit better in Form 2. And of course once I got to Form 2, that's when, for me at least, the Blasphemy Blade starts to shine even more, because she has that massive Flower Bomb attack, Scarlet Rot style. And with the Blasphemy Blade I can get far enough away and fire off like 3 Taker's Flames, and not only basically restore like half of my health bar, but also do a significant amount of damage. Another thing I did learn during my time off from the game was the Shard of Alexander, and how it helps you do 15% more damage when you're using your skill. So those are like the kind of little tidbits that did help to make the difference when I was fighting Malenia the second time round, because I just wasn't really aware of how powerful that item could be when I was trying to fight her during the LP. So the Shard of Alexander, combining with Taker's Flame in the second form, did help me get a lot of damage. So then it became a case of trying to basically dodge her attacks as best as I can in a second form, and only attacking and using Taker's Flame when I could see like a nice big window to be able to do it. And of course the Flower Bomb was one of the main like big easy windows to do that. But alongside that, with a little more practice and a little more time, I started to spot a few more occasions where I was able to use it. So that was generally the deal. I mean, it took a very long time still, but once I got it done, that was that euphoric feeling that I was after. I really felt that rush when I defeated her for the first time without summons, and that was exactly what I was after. Of course, you know, I'm making content for you guys because I think you guys will enjoy seeing it, but honestly the main reason was for my own personal satisfaction, not for the content, because I didn't even bother to try and, you know, record it as commentary or live stream it or whatever. But I did want to keep a record of me doing this because obviously I am a content creator and I know that people have invested a lot of time into this series. And again, I do believe that a lot of people watching are rooting for me to succeed. And if my idea, my personal idea of success against Malenia is to try and do it without summons, then I think you guys will all enjoy seeing me achieve that goal and seeing me improve enough to get that done and earn that little feather in my cap. So that's why I decided to record it and to share it with you guys in the aftermath. But that moment was a really great feeling, and it was nice to prove to myself that I was able to do it, because it was really tantalizing, because it happened so rarely to me that I faced something that I basically end up giving up on wanting to defeat it my way. It's basically like a Final Fantasy X situation where I'd give up and use Zanmato. It's just not my style. But Malenia really did break me in that regard, and when you consider everything together, it just got a bit too much for me. And so I knew I could do it. I just felt like I had what it took to do it. But the fact that I didn't always kind of left a little bit of a hole in the experience that I wanted to fill by coming back and defeating her in New Game Plus the second time round. So that's what I ended up doing, and so that's what I'm going to leave you guys with, my successful attempt against Malenia, where I got my revenge and I managed to defeat her without the use of any summons or anything like that. So it was a nice little personal achievement for me. I know, especially at this stage, this many months after the game's come out, you guys have probably seen every single variation of how to beat Malenia. There's probably people that have beaten her like blindfolded with a dance mat using their hands instead of their feet or whatever the hell they're doing. But for me personally, it's everyone's own little journey, and I think that's part of what makes Elden Ring such a strong game. Everyone's journey is unique, everyone's story is unique, and I think especially with Malenia, I think everyone's story and experience with Malenia is going to be different, and so I wanted to share with you guys my story, and it did end in a satisfying way in the end, and it's at least something that in my own mind I was pretty proud of. So I'm glad I managed to defeat Malenia. God knows what's going to await in any DLC that comes, but at least the confidence that I got from defeating her in the end will, I think, stand me in good stead for any future super difficult Elden Ring bosses that I could face in DLC. I feel like if I can defeat Malenia, I can defeat anything. So that kind of confidence is worth its weight in gold. So I'm looking forward to the DLC and whatever incredibly difficult bosses it may bring in the future. So enjoy the rest of the battle, guys. Thank you all for watching. Thank you so much for all the support with this series. You guys have been absolutely immense. It's been a historic series in many ways. And the fact that I could round off with something a little bit more wholesome and fun like this is a nice way to end things before potential DLC begins. So thank you all so much once again. Really do appreciate your time, and the fact that you chose to spend it watching this series. I'm really grateful. And I leave you guys with this gift at the end of the series. Thank you for watching. Take care.
Dear Mikola. Oh, dearest Mikola. My brother. I'm sorry. I finally met my match.